Hey guys, Deadly Demon here, and today I'm going to be bringing you a beginner's guide to Sgt.Hammer. Sgt.Hammer is a ranged specialist, and while being relatively squishy, I find she's one of the most rewarding heroes once you learn to play her right. So in this guide, we're going to be going through her abilities, her talent choices, and little tricks I've learned along the way while playing Sgt.Hammer in matches. Sgt.Hammer's Q is Spider Mines and fires out 3 mines in a short radius around you. I usually use these either defensively around me as I'm sieged, or to place in bushes to alert me of any potential ganks. This ability has a 14-second cooldown. Her W is Concussive Blast and is a frontal cone ability that pushes enemies back and does a bit of damage. Use this to interrupt abilities of other heroes, or to knock enemies back as you're escaping. This ability has a 12-second cooldown. Siege Mode is Sgt.Hammer's E and also one of her most important abilities. Siege Mode locks you in place and increases your range by 90%, as well as increase basic attack damage against minions and structures by 30%, with an added 25% splash damage to nearby targets. Siege Mode is all about positioning and sets apart a good Sgt.Hammer from a bad one. As you play the hero more, you'll come to learn the places you're going to be comfortable sieging from and know when you should and shouldn't be doing it. This ability has a 5-second cooldown. Lastly, her trait Artillery simply increases her damage by 30% to distant enemies. In terms of her mount, Sgt.Hammer doesn't really have a traditional mount like other heroes. She instead has an ability named Siege Thrusters, which increases your speed by 60% for 4 seconds and is generally used for getting around the map or escaping. This ability has a 5-second cooldown. We're going to be going into her talents now, and before I get into them, I just wanted to say that most of these talents are going to be used situationally and used based on what your enemy and team comps consist of. For level 1, I tend to choose Advanced Artillery here, but there are definitely some other options. For example, you can take Resistant if you feel like the enemy team will have a lot of CC for you, or Ambush if you want to keep your position hidden when initially sieged. Regeneration Master is also an extremely viable option here, if you want to make yourself slightly tankier. For level 4, Maelstrom Shell is by far the best talent here in my opinion. It gives you a much safer distance, which is fantastic since Sgt.Hammer is a very squishy hero. For level 7, I usually choose First Aid due to it making Sgt.Hammer a lot tankier and able to hold their ground for longer. Hypercooling Thrusters can also be chosen if you're on a large map and you know you're going to have to get to objectives faster. Slowing Mines fall behind due to being destroyable by other heroes before they even have a chance to detonate. Level 10 is where you're going to be choosing your heroic abilities. Blunt Force Gun is a ranged missile that can be fired in a straight line across the map, dealing a good amount of damage. I rarely ever choose this talent myself, but it can be used for vision if your team is lacking in that area. Napalm Strike is a targeted AoE ability that deals damage on impact as well as damage in that area for 4 seconds. This is my go-to talent due to it being useful in teamfights, good at clearing waves of enemies, and as an added bonus to clear Zagara's creep. For level 13, Giant Killer is my #1 choice, with First Strike also being a good option, but I always find myself being focused in teamfight scenarios, so I never really get the full use out of it. As I've said, I find the mine talents a little lackluster at the moment, so I rarely ever use them. I've also seen Barricade used a couple times in ranked play, but I never really thought it outshined the other talents in this tree. For level 16, Hover Siege Mode and Graduating Range are my personal favorites, with each being better in different situations. I usually take Hover Siege Mode if I notice my team is moving around a lot during fights, or if the other team simply has a lot of ground AoE I'm going to need to be avoiding. As for Graduating Range, this talent is perfect for maps like Infernal Shrines, Cursed Hollow, and Battlefield of Eternity, due to being able to sit back much further and be relatively safer. For level 20, Nexus Frenzy is by far the best talent in this tree because of the 20% increased range and attack speed it provides. It will leave you doing a ton more damage in team fights, as well as being able to siege from somewhere much safer. Next we're going to be moving on to the tips and tricks section, which is a section I created just to show you little things that I've picked up on different maps while playing her. This one might seem a little bit obvious, but as a general tip, if your team is pushing a lane, make sure to stay behind them so the enemy team will have to work harder to get through to you. On Tomb of the Spider Queen, try to lay your mines by the gem turn-ins to alert your team if the enemy is turning in. On Blackheart's Bay, if your team is fighting around the turret, I found the small area below the turret is a perfect place to siege up. While it is a bit dangerous to be placed in such a tight spot, you can set up a ton of mines in there and punish people if they try to get near you. Combo this with graduating range and you'll have a complete control of the turret. On Cursed Hollow, when a tribute is about to spawn on the map, wait for your team to go in on the location and then try to siege up in a safe spot near it. Your job on objectives like this is to try to zone the enemy team out. This is also true on maps like Infernal Shrines and Battlefield of Eternity. Alright guys, that's the end of the guide. I just wanted to thank you all for watching, and if you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure to leave them in the comments below. This has been Deadly Demon, and I hope to see you next time.
The siege tank, soon I'll be firing my giant gun.